Cincinnati's Women's Choir stands in support of justice for Breonna Taylor, Oluwatoyin Salu, Dominique Fells, and Rhea Milton.
And the countless other Black women and transgender women of color who have been killed due to racism and bigotry, either at the hands of police or the hands of homophobic racists.
It's time that we stand up for Black women in America. It's time that we as women stand together. It's time that we keep each other lifted in this lifelong fight to be seen, respected, and valued. For freedom voices never die.
Sisters, you keep me fighting. You keep me strong. The struggle we are waging is gonna take our whole lives long. But when I look around and see your faces, see the fire behind those eyes, I know it's a battle we will stand and win, for freedom voices never die.
As women, our fight for gender equality is never ending. As we fight for equal pay and treatment, the basic human right to control what happens with our own bodies, cis or trans, queer or straight, Black or white. Yet we can't even feel safe in our own homes.
But even as the fight continues and the crises multiply, we must keep each other strong. So keep that fire behind those eyes, because we must win this battle.
When in battle in war-torn countries, for a just and peaceful place, starvation, killing, loss, and grief have been carved on each woman's face. As women all around the world, we struggle with our lives, fighting to change so many things, joining hands to organize. We must fight for better health care and protect our right for choice, to control our reproductive rights. We must stand and raise our voice. Women must be safe at night and safe in our own homes. Stop the beating, stop the rape. Our bodies are our own. Sisters, you keep me fighting. You keep me strong. The struggle we are waging is gonna take our whole lives long. But when I look around and see your faces, see the fire behind those eyes, I know it's a battle we will stand and win, for freedom voices never die.
Hey everyone, we're so glad you're here with us. The event will begin shortly at 7 p.m. sharp. As you wait, I hope you enjoyed that song from Muse. Next, we'll play something from the Festival of Faiths, Don't forget to log in. There's a login button in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Log in there so you can use the comment section below this video to say who you are, where you're from, and why you're here, or how you're feeling post-election. I'm feeling great because I won. Hello, everyone. My name is Aftab Purval, and it is my honor to welcome you to the 2020 annual gathering of the Intercommunity Justice and Peace Center. Now what? Accountability and reconciliation beyond the election. We are so glad that you could join us tonight. I hope you enjoyed some of the performances from Muse and the Cincinnati Festival of Faith's Choir. Shortly, we will be joined by some of the staff of IJPC, our award recipients, and our keynote speaker, Dr. Fania Davis. But first, there are a few aspects of this event I want to tell you about. As you scroll down this webpage, you'll see that it is full of amazing resources and tools. Right below this live stream is a link to the digital program book for tonight. Below that, you'll see a comment box where you can leave your questions and share why IJPC is important to you with everyone else watching. Also, tell us how you're feeling post-election. But before you can leave those comments, you've got to log in. Don't forget to log in. Your login box is in the top right-hand corner of your screen. Now, as you keep scrolling down, you'll also see a link to the online silent auction. There are some really wonderful items up for sale, so be sure to check that out before you sign off tonight. I, for one, am particularly excited about Dinner with Denise Driehaus. She will cook the dinner, drop it off to your home, and then Zoom with you while you eat it. I'm contractually obligated to pump up Denise Driehaus's item because she determines my budget. The other thing that I'm really excited about is a Ruth Bader Ginsburg basket with all sorts of RBG swag. Keep in mind, The auction will close at 5 p.m. tomorrow. Additionally, you can find a link to purchase Dr. Davis's book, The Little Book of Race and Restorative Justice, Black Lives Healing, and U.S. Social Transformation at the bottom of her bio. At the end of the event, we will be choosing 2 viewers to win a signed copy. That's a big deal, so stick around to see if you're chosen. Finally, I want to remind you that on this page, you will also see links to donate. Very, very important. So far, thanks to your generous support and the support of tonight's sponsors, IJPC has already raised over $30,000 of their $35,000 goal. We're so close. Please consider making a gift at the end of the event so that IJPC can continue being a staple in Cincinnati for justice and peace. Please, please donate. IJPC is so important to me for many reasons, but personally to me because I'm the son of a refugee. My mother is from Tibet. She was forced to flee when the communists took over. My father is from India. The young couple found each other in India as my mom was growing up there as a refugee. They got married and they decided to come to the New World. They decided to come to the United States. My dad, who was a little bit crazy, looked at a map of our great country, and from sea to shining sea, from New York to California, he could have gone anywhere. And he chose Beaver Creek, Ohio. I have no idea what he was thinking, but it's that decision to come to Ohio, to this country, that enabled myself and my brother to thrive. The children of immigrants in this country are the backbone of this country. And immigrants seeking to build a new life in the United States must navigate through a system designed to turn away those most in need from discriminatory laws, strict requirements, expensive fees, backlogged courts, and limited access to visas and green cards. Those are just some of the problems immigrants face. By listening to those stories of those most affected, we can learn and advocate for change. When you stand with immigrants, you strengthen our community. IJPC knows that and works so hard on issues affecting immigrants and so many other issues affecting our community. That's why I'm so passionate about this program, about tonight, but it wouldn't have been possible without sponsors. So now we want to thank those sponsors. Peace Advocate level, Sisters of Precious Blood. Our peace builders, we're so happy to have Glen Mary Home Missioners, Sisters of Mercy, Peace Supporters, Anonymous, Paul and Barbara Bergman, the Cincinnati AFL-CIO Labor Council, Dorothy Day Center for Faith and Justice at Xavier University, Fident Wealth Services, Sisters of Charity of Cincinnati, Peace Promoters, Bellarmine Chapel, Christ Church Cathedral, Cincinnati Indivisible Rapid Response Team, and McKinney and NAMI, co-LPA and Ursulines of Cincinnati. Thank you so much for making tonight possible. Now it's my pleasure to introduce IJPC board leader, Esther Claros Berlioz, who will share a prayer.
Beloved friends, we humbly offer these words to help guide the path of the work that still needs to be done, the work of the head, the heart, and the hands. These are excerpts from A Litany for Those Not Ready for Healing by Reverend Dr. Yolanda Pierce, Princeton Seminary. Let us not rush to the language of healing before understanding the fullness of injury and the depth of a wound. Let us not rush to offer a bandage when gaping wounds require surgery and complete reconstruction. Let us not offer false equivalencies, thereby diminishing the particular pain being felt in a particular circumstance, in a particular historical moment. Let us not speak of reconciliation without speaking of reparations and restoration, or how we can repair the breach and how we can restore the loss. Let us not rush past the loss of a mother's child, a father's child, somebody's beloved child, for we are all beloved. Let us not value a false peace over righteous justice. Let us not be afraid to sit in the ugliness, the messiness, and the pain that is life and community together. Let us not offer cliches to the grieving, those whose hearts are being torn asunder. Let us be silent when we do not know what to say. Let us be humble and listen to the pain, rage, and grief pouring from the lips of our neighbors and friends. Let us pray with our eyes open and our feet firmly planted on the ground. Our God, in your mercy, show me my own complicity in injustice. Convict me for my indifference. Forgive me when I have remained silent. Equip me with a zeal for righteousness, and never let me grow accustomed or acclimated to unrighteousness.
Thank you so much. Now I'd like to hand things over to the Executive Director of the Intercommunity Justice and Peace Center, the incomparable, the incredible Allison Reynolds Berry.
Thank you, AFTAB. Good evening, everyone. AFTAB, thanks so much for hosting our event tonight and for all that you do for the Cincinnati community. It's so wonderful to see so many of you with us tonight celebrating 35 years of IJPC. It's wonderful to see familiar names in the comment section and lots of new ones as well. With the election behind us, we move forward this week and ask ourselves and each other, now what? The reality is that we live in a country that continues to be deeply divided. We have witnessed a rise in violence, hate, and white supremacy in our country. We have failed to find the parents of 666 immigrant children. And after a 17-year hiatus, the federal government has executed 7 men. The Intercommunity Justice and Peace Center exists as a place made up of people who believe that a more just and peaceful world is possible. We believe that peace is the presence of justice and not the absence of tension, and that some of us will need to feel uncomfortable to make true peace possible. We believe in holding ourselves and our elected officials accountable for wrongs done and systemic injustices. We believe that immigrants and refugees are welcome in our communities, that those on death row can be treated with dignity, that human beings have the right to be free from coercion and violence, and that people of all skin colors, languages, and religious beliefs deserve respect and love. It's because of these beliefs that IJPC educates and advocates for peace, challenges unjust local, national, and global systems, and promotes the creation of a nonviolent society. Through a framework of peace and nonviolence, IJPC works to abolish the death penalty, promote immigrant rights, and end human trafficking. We know that each of you in the IJPC network believes similarly because of your commitment to justice, because of your faith, or because your moral compass points toward the greater good. We believe that we belong to each other. The small staff of IJPC works collaboratively to accomplish these critically important goals and has been doing so remotely, adding an additional challenge to our work. I'm so honored to work alongside Haley, Samantha, Jessie, and Sandra, and I'm so grateful for their commitment to our shared mission. Tonight, at our annual gathering, we reflect back on the last fiscal year and the important ways IJPC worked to challenge hatred and violence and offer opportunities to create peace and justice for the most vulnerable among us. We know that language makes a difference, especially on the issue of human trafficking. Victims and survivors deserve dignity and respect as their stories are shared by media, by activists, and by educators. This year, we made changes to our anti-human trafficking educational material to use more trauma-informed images and inclusive language. We work collaboratively on all of our issues and have invited End Slavery Cincinnati to share about the work we do together to end human trafficking.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bree Combs, and I am the Regional Coalition Specialist for End Slavery Cincinnati, the anti-human trafficking coalition serving Southwest Ohio. Together, we work with the Intercommunity Justice and Peace Center to address the issue of human trafficking in the greater Cincinnati area. Through our coalition's Public Education and Awareness Committee, IJPC has proven to be an invaluable partner in the way of educating our schools, healthcare institutions, and news industry on the issue of human trafficking and providing practical tools to help them lead a more comprehensive, inclusive, and authentic discussion about human trafficking. The work of ending human trafficking cannot be achieved alone, which is why our collaboration with IJPC is critical. We truly value the relationship we have developed with IJPC because End Slavery Cincinnati is stronger and wiser and more effective because of the contributions IJPC has invested through the years. We want to congratulate IJPC for their 35 years of work in our community. We thank them for their dedication to a more just and peaceful world, and we are so looking forward to the next 35 years of partnership. Thank you.
With no Ohio executions in 2019 or 2020, our advocacy efforts focused on the treatment of prisoners and high infection rates of COVID-19 among this vulnerable population. When federal executions resumed this summer, we worked closely with groups like Death Penalty Action to stop executions. Check out this video from Abe Bonowitz.
IJPC, Intercommunity Justice and Peace Center. This is Abe Bonowitz with Death Penalty Action. I'm super excited to be with you tonight, and congratulations. I don't even know how long I've been a supporter of IJPC, but I do know that I've known Sue Prieshoff since since 1989. I'm super excited that you're honoring her, and I'm super excited that we've got some amazing opportunities to abolish the death penalty here in Ohio and the federal death penalty. So watch for action, available from Death Penalty Action and in partnership with IJPC, and we're going to do it. Check out this video. Have a great night. Thanks for being a part of it.
We know that this is a racist, unjust system, and that 1 in 25 incarcerated individuals on death row are actually innocent.
It is not easy to stand here before you and talk on these issues. You know, while my brother is still on death row, we've been fighting for his life for almost 24 years, but it is a must that I do so. It is a must that we come together as a community and fight.
How we as a society treat those who are at the lowest level, the condemned, the guilty, that is the greatest reflection on who we are as human beings.
This is a time that we need to raise our voices for life, and we need to stand against death in every ugly manifestation it has, including state executions and federal executions in America.
This February, we were thrilled to receive the news that we won our class action lawsuit against the Ohio BMV. Together with the amazing lawyers at ABLE, we lifted up the real stories of our YES members and saw systemic change take place. Here's Emily Brown.
Hi, my name is Emily Brown, and I'm a staff attorney with Advocates for Basic Legal Equality. Together with IJPC, we work to protect the rights of our immigrant neighbors, family, and friends. IJPC and ABLE share a vision of making sure all immigrants are treated with dignity and respect. We work towards this shared vision by identifying moments when the legal rights of immigrants and their families are being violated. We value this relationship with IJPC because IJPC's members are at the forefront of empowering youth from immigrant families to tell their own stories and lead the fight for comprehensive immigration reform. By working together, we have successfully won a class action lawsuit granting the ability for 16 and 17-year-old Ohioans from immigrant families to obtain their driver's license. Now, it doesn't matter what immigration status their parents have. These teenagers can now exercise their rights as US-born citizens and get their licenses when they turn 16. The lawsuit also protects the rights of citizen children to obtain a state-issued identification card, no matter their age or parents' immigration status. The work towards comprehensive immigration reform cannot be done alone, which is why our collaboration with IJPC is critical.
In October 2019, IJPC launched the first and unfortunately only in-person Race and Racism in Cincinnati bus tour. Our Rethinking Racism initiative works in collaboration with YWCA Greater Cincinnati and with Phil Flanagan, who you'll see in this video.
Hi, my name is Phil Flanagan, and I am the Equity Coordinator at the YWCA of Greater Cincinnati. Together, we work with IJPC to raise Cincinnati's consciousness when it comes to thinking about race and racism through our Rethinking Racism program. IJPC and the YWCA share a vision of peace, justice, equity, and freedom for all. We work toward this shared vision by creating space for inter and intra-racial dialogues, meaningfully exploring the historical impact of racism in Cincinnati, and challenging all people to take responsibility for recognizing and dismantling the white supremacy that pervades our society. We treasure this relationship with IJPC because we recognize that cooperation and collaboration is how we bend the arc of justice. By working together, we have hosted 6 conversational events this year that have invited participants to discuss and think critically about race. We created an educational toolkit and hosted an in-person bus tour, which we are working to make available virtually very soon, so please stay tuned. We have entered yet another civil rights era in our country's history, and we understand that justice is always overdue. Historically, there has always been opposition to the advancement of civil rights, and we recognize the urgency of this moment. That's why we are proud to say that we stand on the side of love, nonviolence, and justice alongside our neighbors at IJPC.
Yep. We look forward to the virtual tour in 2021. In the midst of repeated police brutality and in the wake of the murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and countless others, IJPC joined folks in the streets of Cincinnati, in city council budget meetings, and in community conversation to affirm our belief that Black lives matter and that new solutions to policing are needed in our city and our country. Issues like systemic racism will not change on their own, and we need your support today to ensure IJPC can be there to keep our local and national leaders accountable for the promises they make. We need to address our own biases and motivations for upholding a culture of white supremacy before we see true justice. With your help, IJPC will address these necessary interpersonal and cultural shifts through the Rethinking Racism initiative. We also need your support as we seek policies that address comprehensive immigration reform beyond reinstating the DACA program. We need each of you to continue raising your voices as we work to raise the consciousness of people in Greater Cincinnati and beyond, to the injustices that exist today and the need for repair in our relationships, in our communities, and in our policies. I hope you will join me in making a gift to IJPC tonight by clicking on the donate button below, either now or at the end of the evening. If you would like to get more involved in the work of IJPC, please check out the list of upcoming events in the program book and also on our website.
Thank you, Allison. Wow, you guys have accomplished so much. It's seeing the work, seeing the effort that you put in every single day to fight for us, to improve our community is so inspiring. But those of you at home, this group of badass women can't do it without you. So please give, donate to this incredibly important work, and let's have their backs as they continue to fight for us. Now, without further ado, we'd like to transition to the awards section of the evening. Oh yeah, this is the exciting part. Tonight, we are honoring 2 amazing local leaders. We know many of you are here tonight to support them. Please be sure to share your congratulatory remarks in the comments section. I promise we are reading those. The comment section is below the video and you have to log in to leave one of those comments. To introduce the recipient of the 2020 IJPC Margaret Fuller Peace Award is IJPC Program Manager, Jesse Frank.
Good evening. My name is Jessie Frank, and I am the Anti-Death Penalty and Peace and Nonviolence Program Manager at IJPC. It is my honor to recognize Sue Prieshoff as the 2020 IJPC Margaret Fuller Peace Award recipient. Sue has worked for peace and justice for decades, and many of those years have been spent working with IJPC to advocate for an end to the death penalty. When I think about the work Sue does, I think about how she simply shows up, always. How her unwavering commitment to abolishing the death penalty is matched only by her unwavering commitment to people. Sue has sustained relationships with individuals on death row for decades, sharing advice or encouragement through countless letters, phone calls, and visits. Mostly, though, Sue simply listens to these men that society has chosen to ignore. Through these relationships, Sue and others at IJPC have been able to help organize support for quite a few inmates over the years, specifically Johnny Bird, Derek Jameson, Sean Hawkins, and Gary Johnson. Sue also uses her voice to challenge the death penalty as an unjust system, writing letters to elected officials and local newspapers. She educates in classrooms and churches, pointing out misconceptions about the death penalty and humanizing the men who face execution. Every month, IJPC's Anti-Death Penalty Committee signs birthday cards to send to men on death row. I've noticed that Sue signs every card with "Hold on to hope," followed by a tiny smiley face. Sue, your resilience, humility, and unconditional love for those who are suffering gives me so much hope to hold on to. You are so clearly deserving of this honor. So on behalf of the board and staff of IJPC, it is my honor to present this year's Margaret Fuller Peace Award to Sue Prieshoff.
Hello, my name is Sue Prieshoff. Thank you so much for joining us here on the viral Intercommunity Justice and Peace 2020 annual gathering. And thanks so much, Jessie, for that very complimentary introduction. You're too kind. And Paul, thanks for the poem. I'm honored to be here tonight along with Reverend Pierce. I appreciate the time and efforts of the office, Allison, Jessie, Samantha, and the rest of the staff, Eunice, past and present, and they are always ready to offer their time to help me, along with the members of the Death Penalty Committee, especially Patty, Mike, Sonny, Dorsey, Karen, Andrea, and Sister Alice. You have had a big hand in molding me and pointing me in the right direction. You have all been so encouraging to me over all these years. Also to my family, who through the years got out of doing dishes at Thanksgiving by signing the Christmas cards to the death row inmates. And especially I want to thank my husband, Alan, who without him, none of this could happen. He's always my rock. He lets me do what I feel needs to be done and make sure it happens. He keeps the home fires burning. Thanks, sweetie. Since the early 80s, when I first got involved with the justice system, or as Reverend McCracken called it, the injustice system, I learned it's not always what you know, but who you know. Because of IJPC, I bumped elbows with inmates, family members, jailers, prosecutors, court reporters, judges, legislatures, media, religious from so many faiths, new friends from across the great pond, and oh, so many protest friends. I learned how to practice what I believe and put it out on the front line. Just being present in the moment, be it at the courtroom, at a kitchen table, at an execution site, just being there is what I believe was important. The issue surrounding the death penalty is not easily discussed by most. I believe in the respect of life from conception to natural death. No matter what someone has done, it is not my place to decide their fate. We all have a skeleton in our closet, and I often ask, what if it was your brother? What if it was my brother who did the offense? Becoming involved, I had to evaluate my true feelings. When a member of our group was killed by a released inmate trying to get him back into society, or a colleague who died of AIDS because she was visiting the jails while visiting inmates, I often questioned God, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Then he sends along a mom who says, just right, my son. Or I hear a sermon about walking a mile in another's shoes, and I know I'm on the right path with renewed energy. IJPC has been there offering advice, encouragement, a gentle nudge, or sometimes that big push to get me out there and talk the talk and walk the walk. When I go out to a school or church, I let them know what our group is doing and why. And then I ask them, like my button says, why do we kill people who kill people, to show them that killing people is wrong? Groups throughout Ohio, and especially here in Cincinnati, have been so supportive in my education of the judicial system through classes, group gatherings, seminars, protests, and events. And with this information, I go back to inmates and their families and join them in their fight for their loved ones. Going out to groups, I tell my story and let them know of options, opportunities, and choices that they make. Makes a difference. Just getting out there and getting involved, such as being a pen pal, signing a petition, writing your congressman, going to a meeting, being open to dialogue. It all makes a difference. And so does making a donation to IJPC. Whether it's monetary, your time to volunteer, sending a prayer, it all adds up to making a difference, and it extends an opportunity to get out there and get the work done. Thank you for all of your time and helping me to help those on Ohio's death row. It is a privilege to be with such a wonderful group of people who want to make our world a better place for all of us. Happy 35th anniversary, and thank you so much for the award. Love you. Bye-bye.
Sue, congratulations. So well deserved. Your speech was moving. It was heartwarming. It was inspiring. I mean, I just met you, but I can't help but smile when I look at you. You're just so full of love. I so appreciate it. Sue is not just a mover and shaker here in Ohio in the United States. Sue is so famous. She has someone watching all the way from Rome tonight to support her. I don't know what time it is in Rome, but it is late. So that is some commitment. That is some love. And Sue, I'll come over and do the dishes. I'm very happy to do that. So we should hang out. Anyway, now to introduce the recipient of the 2020 IJPC Bob Maxwell Peacebuilder Award. We have Katie Sellers.
My name is Kate Doctoral City. It is my honor to have nominated Reverend Nelson J. Pierce Jr. for the IJPC 2020 Bob Maxwell Peacebuilder Award. Reverend Pierce is the senior pastor of Beloved Community Church. He is also the director of faith and race programming at Xavier University. An incredible advocate for justice, Reverend Pierce has been active for voter rights, organized clergy and communities after the killings of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, and Sam DuBose here in Cincinnati. It is through his justice work that I was first blessed by Reverend Pierce, before I ever actually met him. He had redesigned a community organizing training that I was part of in 2017, and it was a transformative experience for me as a teacher of faith and a worker for justice to learn what he insisted all organizers must know, that I can't pour from an empty cup. I need to be nourished spiritually before I can give back to others. The first time I actually met Reverend Pierce was after a lecture he hosted at Xavier University earlier this year. Following that meeting, it seemed he kept showing up. He showed up at meetings at City Hall. He showed up at dialogues at Xavier University. He showed up at marches to support Black lives. And he showed up when the rights of peaceful protesters were curtailed this summer, and over 500 peaceful people were arrested for insisting that Black lives matter, even after curfew. When those protesters were released from jail, he was the one who was there to welcome them, to manage the bail fund, to treat them with compassion and dignity, and he does so even to this present day. If you have been watching the struggle for justice here in Cincinnati this year, you have seen the work of Reverend Pierce. My life and the life of countless others have and will continue to benefit from the wisdom, vision, work, and leadership of Reverend Pierce. It is my honor to present this year's award to Reverend Nelson Pierce Jr.
Thank you so much, Katie, for that wonderful tribute. I hope that I may continue to live up to the strength and the beauty of the words that you shared. Thank you to the staff and members of IJPC, especially Allison, Haley, Shannon, and all of those who have given their time and energy to do this amazing work, to Sue and AFTAB, and our keynote speaker who will be coming in a few moments. I want to say thank you also to the members and friends of Beloved Community Church, the church that I've been privileged to pastor for the last 10 years, especially my absolutely amazing fiance, Robin Angela Wright. 2020 has been an emotional year. On July 17th, Representative John Lewis left this life and handed to us a baton so that we might continue in the work of getting into good trouble. Before he passed, I had the honor of meeting him when he came to the church I was pastoring. And he said in conversation that day that each of us, that each generation must do what it can to build the beloved community. And in this time when the attacks on Black lives continue to be prevalent, when there's blatant disregard even for the appearance of a fair and just democratic process, when the energy of those who seek to sow chaos and division are rivaling the energy of those of us who seek to do love and justice, then we must heed ever more closely John Lewis's words and do all that we can to make our corner of the world more loving and more just. And as we do that work, then our world can be more peaceful. I'm so honored to have been given this award today. And I pray that you will continue to join me and IJPC in this great work of making Cincinnati, of making Ohio, and through it, the rest of the nation, a more loving, more just, and more peaceful place. God bless you, and thank you so much.
Wow, well, hopefully now you can see why I believe Reverend Pierce is the moral voice of Cincinnati, because he speaks with such clarity, he speaks with such passion, and he speaks and acts with such love. And, you know, honestly, I was a little conflicted about Reverend Pierce getting this award. I was hoping to be the only male in this program, but, you know, that's fine. I guess fighting for justice warrants inclusion in the program. But in all seriousness, I've seen firsthand, I'm privileged to call Reverend Pierce a friend, and I've seen him firsthand through his incredible work reforming our bail system, how he changes people's lives and changes systems that are so often so oppressive. So much love, much respect to my friend and brother, Reverend Pierce. Thank you so much to Sue. Thank you so much to Reverend Pierce for being with us tonight. It's just such an honor. Now, I know you are all very excited for the keynote portion of the event. So please stick around after Dr. Davis's address for a live question and answer. As you watch and listen to her address, you can use the comment section below to leave your thoughts and questions. Now, to introduce Dr. Davis is IJPC Operations Manager, the person behind the scenes who is making all of this possible, the puppet master, Haley Hughey.
Good evening. My name is Haley Hughey, the operations of the Intercommunity Justice and Peace Center. Tonight, it is my honor to introduce Dr. Fania Davis as our keynote speaker. Dr. Davis is an educator, author, restorative justice practitioner, and longtime social justice activist and civil rights attorney with a PhD in Indigenous knowledge. Coming of age in Birmingham, Alabama, during the social ferment of the civil rights era, the murder of two close childhood friends in the 1963 Sunday school bombings crystallized within Fania a passionate commitment to social transformation. For the next decades, she was active in the civil rights, Black liberation, women's, prisoners, peace, anti-racial violence, and anti-apartheid movements. Studying with Indigenous healers, particularly African, catalyzed Fania's search for a healing justice. Founding Director Emerita of Restorative Justice of Oakland Youth, her numerous honors include the Nbutu Award for Service to Humanity, the Maloney Award for Excellence in Youth Restorative Justice, World Trust's Healing Justice Award, the Tikkun Repair the World Award, the Ella Baker Joe Baker Award, the Bioneers Changemaker Award, and the Ebony Power 100 Award. The Los Angeles Times named her a new civil rights leader of the 21st century. Fania's latest publication, The Little Book of Race and Restorative Justice, Black Lives, Healing, and U.S. Social Transformation, can be found below this live stream to buy. Without further ado, Dr. Fania Davis.
Thank you so much, Haley. Thank you, Allison, Shannon, and thank you, Intercommunity Peace and Justice Center, for the honor of inviting me to Keynote, your 2020 annual gathering. Thank you, AFTAB, and thank you, wonderful honorees, for who you are and what you do. I first want to honor and invoke the name of the ancestors of the land where I live and work and play here in Oakland, California. Oakland is the unceded territory of the Chochenyo Ohlone people. I imagine that most of you here tonight are in Cincinnati. If so, I believe you're standing on the unceded territory of the Ojibwa, Lenape, Ottawa, Wyandotte, and Shawnee tribes. If you happen to be in other places in the nation, share with us in the chat the names of the ancestors of the areas where you are. In invoking the original inhabitants of the land where we stand, we engage in an act of truth-telling, the first step in accountability processes. That is, facing the truth. And so tonight we honor the long-buried truth. The United States is a post-genocidal land. It is an occupied land. And like the historical harm of slavery, we have yet to fully recognize, take responsibility for, and take reparative action for this massive historical harm and its continuing impacts. Recognize, take responsibility for, and take reparative action. These indeed are the 3 R's of accountability in restorative justice. As we open the evening, I want to honor the souls who have lost their lives due to the injustices laid bare by and presidential mismanagement of the coronavirus pandemic, with the numbers of those succumbing skyrocketing in this moment as we speak. Please let's take a deep collective breath together in their honor. I wish to honor Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Walter Wallace, and the countless souls whose lives have been taken by police terror. All of those who have lost their lives because the knee of white supremacy and terror has been on their neck for the last 401 years. Let us take a deep breath in their honor. I also want to acknowledge each and every one of you present this evening for all you are and all you do to create just, healing, loving, and verdant futures. I want to especially acknowledge the Intercommunity Peace and Justice Center for its path-breaking social justice advocacy and education over the last decades to end the death penalty, to promote peace and racial justice, to protect the rights of immigrant families, and to end human trafficking. The work we celebrate at this annual gathering puts the needs of the poor and vulnerable first. It honors the sacredness and equal moral worth and dignity of all humans. It answers the divine call for us to be peacemakers and crusaders for justice. It answers the sacred call to live into our values and our faith by stewarding the earth and caring for all of God's creation. So one more time, let's show some love to the Intercommunity Peace and Justice Center. Thank you so much. I want to do a quick interactive exercise with you. How did you feel after the election results came in on Saturday? Take a moment and write a word or two in the chat in response to this question. I'm going to pause a moment or so to give you the time to do that. And Allison, can you read the chats that have come in now or even earlier?
Thanks, Dr. Davis. So as folks are writing in their comments, most of them are still congratulating our award recipients, which is wonderful. So we'll give them a little bit of time to write down how they're feeling post-election. I know that earlier on we had someone talk about how they were feeling hopeful about the new leadership.
Okay, so the question is, and I'm going to repeat it, take a moment and write a word or two in the chat in response to the question of how you felt or how you're feeling after the election results came in. And what did I model? Okay, so I felt relieved, I felt celebratory, and ooh, there's a whole lot of work that we have to do in this nation.
Christina said that she's feeling indifferent. Samantha said she felt relief. Donna said a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Abe said relief. Sister Margie said relieved. Cindy said relieved and peaceful. Emmanuel Syaf said bought pints of ice cream, happy for young people and people of color. Andrea felt hopeful and joyful.
Okay, that's great. And there's one other thing I want you to do. I'd love for you to express or do a physical gesture that expresses your feeling. And I'll model. I said I felt relieved, celebratory, yes. And ooh, gosh, so much work to do. Can you just do that for a moment? Great. Okay. It's important, to move whenever we can, especially during this time when we're sitting so much. Yes, celebration, relief. There was dancing in the streets, car horns were blaring, people hanging from their windows, beating pots and pans, people screaming for joy. We were jubilant. The presidency from hell is done. After 4 years, the long national nightmare has ended. And we have paused the free fall into hell, as Congressperson AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has said. Yes, we celebrate. And we cannot rest easy not knowing what chaos and further damage the present occupant, who is not conceding, may cause for the next 70 days or so. So there's more nail biting ahead. We're celebrating not knowing what damage he'll do related to the pandemic, healthcare, immigration, climate catastrophe, systemic racism, and police terror. So it's complicated. We're celebrating, though we cannot rest easy knowing that roughly half of the 2020 electorate voted to continue President Trump's neo-fascistic policies. We see media reports saying the majority of white people in the country voted for these policies. We see reports saying the country is divided in half. Not to minimize or diminish the persistence and potency of white supremacy in our nation, I want to push back a little bit here. I want to push back on the idea that the majority of white people in this country voted for Trump. First, one thing we've learned from 2016 and 2020, we cannot trust the polls. Let's be cautious about relying on exit polls to draw sweeping conclusions about who we are as a nation. Second, since 1932, the voter turnout rate has usually hovered between 50 and 60% of all eligible voters. The 2020 election brought out record numbers of voters, estimated at about 64% of all eligible voters. That means less than 2/3 of all eligible voters in the nation voted in 2020, even with this very high turnout. The US population is about 330 million all told, and about 234 million are eligible voters. So in 2020, about 71 million people voted for Trump. Yes, this is less than half of those voting, but it's 31% of all eligible voters. So it's 31% of all eligible voters and about 33% or 76 million of all eligible voters voted for Biden. You have to, I'm not a whiz at math and I need some help here, but I hope you're getting what I'm saying. So 74% of Trump's voters were white and 26% were people of color. So the actual number of white people who voted for Trump, that would be 74% of 71 million. And that's about 53,500,000 white people in this country voted for Trump. Non-Latinx white people who actually cast a vote. This does not equal the majority of the white voting population in this country. It's really more like about 35%. So we can say, I believe, that a little over 1/3 of all eligible white voters in the nation actually voted for Trump. This is not the majority of white folks in this nation. Also, in my view, media reports that say that almost 60% of white people in this country voted for Trump fly in the face of what I saw with my own eyes in the wake of George Floyd, where the legions marching against racial terror in 50 states and 2,500 cities, even in small white towns for the first time in history. Up until that time, anti-police terror demonstrations were majority people of color. These reports also fly in the face of the great awakening that has been underway today, where white people are holding themselves accountable for the massive historical harm of centuries-old systems of domination like never before. These reports fly in the face of the historic polls just a few months ago that showed 60% of white people supported Black Lives Matter. Do you remember those polls? These reports fly in the face of the surging thousands, tens of thousands of white people who are joining white anti-racist organizations like Wide Awake, showing up for racial justice, coming to the table. This has been happening since 2016. In fact, since George Floyd's life was taken, 500,000 white people sought to join one of these organizations, SURGE, showing up for racial justice. And 500 communities nationwide sought to start new chapters in both rural and urban areas throughout the country. So the reports of a majority of whites accepting Trump's neo-fascistic policies must be seen in the context of Yale, Brown, Columbia, University of Virginia, Harvard, Georgetown, and about 65 other universities who are telling the truth about their complicity with slavery and the slave trade and trying to make reparations for it. It must be seen in the context of all of the statues extolling slavery that are falling and all the memorials to enslaved and lynched persons that are rising. These reports must be seen in light of the fact that the term white supremacy itself is moving from margins to mainstream in public discourse. These reports must be seen in the light that systemic racism is now nearly a household expression, and Biden utters it almost every time he speaks. These reports must also be seen in the light of the astounding progress we have made in the Black reparations movement just this year. Most 2020 presidential candidates, when there were so many in the field, excluding Biden, supported reparations. Growing numbers of cities have passed legislation creating reparations funds, including Chicago's police torture reparations fund, rather. as well as the initiatives in Charlottesville, Virginia, Providence, Rhode Island, Asheville, North Carolina, and the reparations bill passed here in California by lawmakers in June. The reports that the majority of whites voted for Trump must be seen in the context of all the reimagining public safety initiatives in scores of cities around the nation. Oakland, here where I live, has cut $15 million from its police budget this fiscal year. And City Council, the Oakland City Council, voted to form Reimagining Public Safety Task Force, to cut funding to the police by 50% by the end of the year. 50% by the end of the year. We're also reimagining school safety and coming up with a plan that is finding alternative community-based approaches to keeping our schools safe. These reports that the majority of white people voted for Trump must be seen in the context generally of projects like the New York Times 1619 initiative, that we're finally looking in the mirror, that show that we're finally looking in the mirror, facing the truth, that we are a nation born not in liberty, but in terror of white supremacy, of slavery, of genocide, of land theft, and of racial capitalism. I have been involved in activist movements all my life since the 1950s. And all the recent historic advances in anti-racist consciousness and action amongst white people in the nation are simply astounding. All that said, there are deep partisan divides in our nation, and the Biden-Harris team will be hamstrung without a Senate majority. It is undeniable that exit polls show that even after all the misery the incumbent has caused, all his misogynistic behavior against women, all the racism he has aroused, all the attacks against the earth, all the immigrant families he's destroyed, all the people whose lives were taken by coronavirus due to his callous mismanagement, roughly half, in light of all of that, in spite of all of that, roughly half of those who turned out to vote voted to continue the descent into hell. That's bad and depressing enough. But let us not forget, it's not half of the country. It's not the majority of white people in the country. There are other reasons to be hopeful about the elections. Cori Bush is the new congressperson from St. Louis who got her start in public life in the Black Lives Matter movement during the Ferguson uprising, and she is joining the squad. Two openly gay Black men, Mondaire Jones and Richie Torres from New York, and there is Jamal Bowman in New York. These new elected officials are strengthening the progressive bloc in Congress, supporting Black Lives Matter, Medicare for all, Green New Deal with jobs for all and climate protections, and universal free education and debt relief, student debt relief. 3 women of color in New Mexico's congressional delegation now, 2 being Native American and 1 Latinx. And there are significant state victories of transgender candidates and of a number of Muslims. About Kamala Harris, it is historic and great cause for celebration to see a daughter of immigrants elected to the vice presidency, a woman, an African American, a Caribbean American, an Asian American woman, a first in so many categories. And there's no doubt that it was Black people and people of color in general who were decisive in the Biden-Harris victory, whether in Arizona, Michigan, Georgia, or Pennsylvania. Yet, we must not forget that it is not vice presidents and not even presidents, no matter how historic their victory, no matter how many firsts come with their victory, they do not shape the arc of history. No individual does. Social movements of masses of people do. It is not the Democratic Party, a party of capital aligned to the 1% that will shape the new futures that are beckoning. They will not create the sea changes in public consciousness that are needed today to move into a new future. They will not lead us in reimagining new public safety futures where Black Lives Matter It is entire communities united who will do this. It is a climate justice movement led by millions of children the world over who will lead us into new, safe, and verdant futures. It is the immigrant rights movements that will protect children from being kidnapped from their mothers and fathers and allow them to pursue their dreams of a better life. It is LGBTQIA movements who will protect non-binary people from discrimination, abuse, violence, and terror. It is the abolitionists for the death penalty, abolitionists for or against prisons. It is transformative justice movements. It is restorative justice movements led by those most negatively impacted that will help us re-envision public safety and justice in ways that Black lives matter. It is Occupy and other movements that will help us re-envision economies of the future. Worker-owned co-ops, other collective economic structures that lovingly center the well-being of all human and earth beings, and that replaces a racial capitalist system that exalts profit, whiteness, and extreme individualism. It is mass movements that will ensure the right to free and universal health care and education. Movements like the Standing Rock movement, led by Indigenous youth, that will lead the way in securing sovereignty for Indigenous communities. Disability rights movements that will secure equal opportunities and rights for all people with disabilities. It is the boycott, divest, sanction movements in solidarity with the people of Palestine engaged in a struggle against apartheid Zionist government of Israel, who will help us recognize the truth of Martin Luther King's principle that injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. In other words, it is not individuals, presidents, vice presidents, or parties of capital like the Democratic Party that will bring the changes that we so desperately need. It has historically been broad, massive, multiracial movements that shape the arc of history and that will bend it toward justice. Indeed, the Biden-Harris victory offers us a moment of celebration, and let's celebrate all our victories, no matter how large or small. But this is no time to rest. Post-election accountability requires us to continue and indeed intensify the work of organizing. The good thing, of course, is with the Biden-Harris victory, today we have more favorable conditions to effectively organize and be victorious. So post-election accountability looks like continuing and intensifying all the amazing organizing work you are doing there in Cincinnati with the Intercommunity Peace and Justice Center and many other social justice organizations. Accountability after the election, if you're white, also looks like an intentional, deliberate, and unrelenting focus on building capacity in yourself, in your families, and in your communities as white anti-racist activists. It looks like being passionate and savvy about transforming hegemonic white supremacists and other systems of domination that live both inside and outside of us. It means supporting, joining, and building on the current amazing anti-racist initiatives now underway in this country that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Minneapolis gets that justice for George Floyd requires more than prosecuting individual officers. The problem isn't just individual, it's systemic. It's not a matter of a few rotten apples, it's the whole barrel of policing in the US. Yet prevailing justice only has the capacity to address individual harm, and ineffectively at that. As a perpetrator itself of massive harm, this system is plainly incapable of stopping the killings. We are in a time of recognizing harm, taking responsibility for harm, and taking action to repair harm and ensure non-recurrence. And that is what accountability looks like. It involves more than prosecuting individual officers. It means abolishing systems that systematically subjugate and terrorize Black people. It means reimagining new futures, new policing, and new justice, and new relational futures. The nationwide cry to re-envision policing is also a cry to re-envision justice, beyond a justice that blames, judges, and punishes people. History calls us to imagine a justice that transforms both unjust relationships and systems, a justice that requires us to transform ourselves as we transform the world. Restorative injustice informed truth processes rooted in indigenous wisdoms about humanity, collectivity, interidentity, responsibility, and the earth are our best hope. Today, we hear multiple appeals for truth and reconciliation processes from Minneapolis, San Francisco, Philadelphia, Boston, and from US Congresspersons Barbara Lee and Al Green. We have so much to learn from the past. Over the last 45 years, countries in the global South have used truth processes to help them transition from an era of massive human rights abuses to Western-style democracy. In the last decade, Canada and the US have followed suit with truth processes to address long-standing abuses against Indigenous and African-descended people. However, in these settings, commissions have largely been top-down, quasi-judicial bodies of experts who hold hearings, examine evidence, and develop recommendations, such as public policies, restitution, corrections to official records, and curricular changes. Plus, most previous truth processes, including in South Africa, favored approaches that centered individual rather than systemic wrongdoing. Though in other times in geopolitical contexts, the top-down truth and reconciliation model may have had some traction in the United States today. Truth processes where systemic harm is not addressed and where governments don't share power with communities, especially historically marginalized communities, will not work. The way we imagine new futures is crucial. If the way we get there relies on hierarchies of power, we will replicate hierarchy. If the way we get there embodies power over instead of power with, we'll reproduce systems of domination. We simply cannot get to a new place in an old way, can we? While current calls for truth and reconciliation gesture toward a more capacious justice, we need processes that reflect the particular insights of these times. Truth processes that are grassroots and restorative justice informed hold the greatest promise. Nothing about us without us. Nothing about us without us is a central tenet of restorative justice. In an ongoing, radically respectful and radically inclusive process, we must do the work ourselves. This means in every neighborhood, on every block, everyday people roll up their sleeves into the challenging and hopeful work of engendering transformed relationships and structures leading into new futures. Peacemaking circles, rooted in Tlingit Tagish and other indigenous traditions, exemplify a shared leadership model whose ethos is communitarian, inclusivist, and accountability-based, drawing on everyone's wisdom, are counter-hegemonic. The organization I founded and previously directed Restorative Justice for Oakland Youth and several other local restorative justice groups have been fostering circles here for years. The Bay Area Transformative Justice Collective, a community group based in Oakland as well, builds transformative justice responses to child sexual abuse. It has been cultivating community pods. These are examples of generative and embodied facilitated spaces where diverse communities can engage in dialogical encounter, deepen trust, reckon with the past, and breathe life into transformed relations and structures of the future so that we can finally reconcile and finally heal as a nation. History calls upon us not only to build new houses of public safety and justice, where Black lives are no longer systematically brutalized, we also need new economic structures. The ravages of COVID-19 demonstrate that racial capitalism is incapable of meeting the basic health needs of its citizens. The cases of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Walter Wallace, George Floyd, Tony McDade, and countless others show it is unable to protect citizens from police terror. Climate catastrophe teaches us that capitalism has neither the ability nor the will to protect our children or the earth. These are each radical, systemic, and relational conditions that must be met with radical, systemic, and relational remedies. There is so much injustice in this world caused by colonialism, racial capitalism, slavery, slave trade, land theft, genocide, structural racism, heteropatriarchy, mass incarceration, xenophobia, and climate catastrophe. We need justice. And for centuries, these iniquitous systems have been enacting unrelenting, unfathomable trauma to our mind, bodies, our families, our communities, our earth. We need healing, not just one or the other, not just healing, not just justice, both. If we are to move into a future at all, this is a non-binary proposition. I explored this warrior healer theme in my book, The Little Book of Race and Restorative Justice. Ultimately, we are being invited to reimagine what it means to be human, living in balance with others and the earth. Restorative justice circles and transformative justice pods exemplify the kinds of liberatory spaces where we can imagine and practice new relational ways of being now. Predating and challenging the slave trade, genocide, and racial capitalism, restorative justice is inspired by a vision of justice decolonized. It is rooted in indigenous insights, affirming humans' equal moral worth and dignity, their inter-identity, and their reciprocal responsibility to one another and to the earth. One of the more powerful things we can do today is hold fast to values of radical respect, radical relationality, radical responsibility, while incarnating a deep anti-racist, anti-heteropatriarchal, and anti-capitalist consciousness. Restorative justice informed truth processes, offer a way to face and transform history's pain while radically reimagining more beautiful relationships and structures that will be just, accommodating, and able to serve as a home for all. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wow. Dr. Davis, thank you so much.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Dr. Davis. That was really inspiring. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now we're going to have a short Q&A session with Dr. Davis. If you have a question for Dr. Davis, you can scroll down on your page right now. Just below this video, you can leave your own comments and questions, and Allison will be discussing them with Dr. Davis. As we take a moment for you to think about your questions and write your questions, I also want to remind everyone that now is a great time to make an online donation to IJPC. In addition to being your MC tonight, I'm also your official reminder to please donate. We are so close, just a few dollars short of our $35,000 goal. Every single dollar helps, so please consider giving. Your gift allows IJPC to educate and advocate in Cincinnati for issues of immigrant dignity, racial justice, death penalty, abolition, human trafficking, and so much more. IJPC is at the forefront, leading the movement for change. And I know this because I partnered with IJPC when we heard reports that ICE was in our own Hamilton County Courthouse, intimidating immigrants and others, and having a chilling effect on folks who needed access to the courts. IJPC and I leapt into action to make sure that all communities of color, immigrant and non-immigrant, know that they are welcome in that courthouse. That's the important work every single day that IJPC does. Well, now I don't want to keep your questions from Dr. Davis, so I'll kick it over back to Allison.
Thank you, AFTAB, and thank you so much, Dr. Davis. Tonight's event is so important to IJPC, not only because we get to hear from wonderful people like Dr. Davis and recognize our own local leaders like Sue and Reverend Pierce, but also because the funds raised tonight sustain IJPC throughout the year. So thank you to all who have given so far, and know that the money that is raised tonight and in the auction all go to support our overall goal. The auction will be open until tomorrow at 5 p.m., so be sure to bid. Now to some of your questions. We wanted to first start, Dr. Davis, there is so much that you have been involved in over decades of work in social justice issues. How do you stay committed, engaged, and resilient over time?
Good question. A number of things. Young people give me a lot of inspiration and energy and hope. And history always calls upon young people when we need massive changes. And we see that today in the climate justice movement. We see that in the Black Lives Matter. We saw it in the indigenous rights movement. We saw it historically with the Black Panthers. Huey Newton and Bobby Seale were only 19 years old when they started the Black Panther Party. Dr. King was only 25 when he took his position at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery around the time of the Montgomery bus boycott. So it's the youth who are the ones who have the creativity and the energy and the passion to drive just the change that is needed. And I was one of those youth, of course, back in the 60s and 70s as well. And, you know, when we're in it for longevity, when we are, you know, wanting to be in this struggle, in these movements for a long time, self-care is so important. Self-care is to spirit, to mind, to body. And myself, I do yoga, I do Pilates, I meditate, I dance, and that dancing, of course, is really great for the spirit. And I have a spiritual practice. So all of these things, the self-care, of you know, all of who we are, mind, body, spirit, and just watching the way you all are carrying on in these movements, that's what keeps me going.
Thank you so much. One question we had is, can you speak to the power of terminology? You talked about terms such as white supremacy that were once fringe terms and now have become household words. How do we keep them mainstream and allow them to provide momentum for our movements?
You keep them mainstream by keep on repeating them and saying them, and not just saying them and repeating them, but studying them, writing articles about it, giving talks about it, going into places where these terms are not necessarily so commonly heard, and just, you know, just staying active. Yeah, it's just amazing to me to see how this change happened overnight. Reparations, the same. You would consider it kind of fringe and a little kooky if you advocated for reparations, but today presidential candidates. So you know, it is a symbolic. It's a symbolic expression of the deep sea change that we are seeing in anti-racist consciousness in this country. So let's just keep on being strong anti-racist, and those terms will definitely remain as well.
as a leading voice for restorative justice in the country, can you remind us again of the 3 R's of restorative justice?
Yeah, there are a couple of, there's the 3 R's that Howard Zehr, who's considered the grandfather of restorative justice, talks about. Respect, responsibility, and relationship. Those are the values: respect, responsibility, and relationship. I talk about the 3 R's of accountability, or the 3 R's of justice: recognizing harm, taking responsibility for that harm, and taking reparative action for that harm, including action that will ensure non-recurrence. And recognizing harm, that's the truth-telling part. Recognizing harm means unsilencing long silenced histories, unearthing long buried histories. Truth-telling, that's the recognizing of harm. Taking responsibility for harm means, yes, this is who we are. This is what we did. Not trying to explain it away, not trying to minimize it, not trying to justify it, but, owning it. And then reparative action, that can mean reparations. And reparations is not just a check, it's not money, although, restitution. In our country, we have a long tradition. When you're hurt, you can sue for compensation for that pain and suffering, or if you've lost property. We have that is our tradition in this country. And so, yes, people who have been harmed historically are entitled to reparations. And reparations includes the kind of work that I talked about a little bit, of the reparations funds that we see in many, many different cities. It includes taking down the Confederate statues and putting up the statues honoring lynched persons and harmed persons. It means completely transforming curricula, like in Germany is a good example of the way that they have engaged in reparative action by reforming their curricula. In Germany, kids K through 12 learn about the Holocaust, not just in history courses and not just in sociology courses, but in science courses, in math courses, in art courses, in all courses that you take at school. As a student in Germany, you're going to learn about the Holocaust. And you also have teachers who are required to go to once a year to extensive trainings to learn how to better teach the Holocaust. And students are required to do field trips to memorials all over Germany, whether they're Stumpelstein, which are little memorials that dot every city all over Germany. You cannot walk through Germany without being reminded of what happened. And other museums. So that's also a form of reparations. And ensuring non-recurrence is something that we really cannot take very lightly. How do we ensure non-recurrence? And that's, I think, this drive and this commitment and desire to ensure non-recurrence means that we must abolish systems that systematically subjugate and brutalize and terrorize Black people. We have to re-envision how we ensure public safety, re-envision how we do justice in ways where Black lives matter.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Combining that question and something that was asked earlier, someone asked, again, to the terminology question, and thinking about how we prevent the demonization of terms like defund the police to be used as a legitimate and logical movement, as you talk about non-reoccurrence. How would you speak to that terminology, especially around defunding the police?
Well, I think, automatically people misunderstand that term and think it means, oh my gosh, when I call 911, nobody's going to come and protect me. I'm completely vulnerable, because there's not going to be anybody to help me when I'm burglarized or when I'm robbed or when I'm assaulted. No, that's not what it means. Defunding the police means transferring a lot of the funding to police that police really should not be receiving in the first place, because police are looked to answer calls that involve mental health issues. Mental health issues are criminalized in this country. That money should not go to police who don't know how to handle mental health issues in the first place, and only know how to shoot and only know how to use force. That money should not go to police who are addressing homelessness, which is also criminalized in this country. We need that money to go to mental health professionals, for mental health issues, and to people, social workers, for social or for homelessness issues. So it means transferring funds to agencies that are better equipped to more effectively address problems that are criminalized and should not be being addressed by police in the first place. And the other thing is, I think for me, defunding the police means we just need to figure out creative and new and innovative ways of addressing public safety. We still need to and want to ensure public safety. It doesn't have to be done the way it is being done, with police. The other thing, we say defund the police because police historically in this nation have played the role of terrorizing Black people, starting with the slave patrols. Those were the first police in this country. The patrols, the members of those patrols would be commissioned to chase down and kill or torture Black people who had escaped or who had rebelled from slavery in some sort of way. And then after slavery was abolished, police were used to enforce Black codes, and Black codes were like slave codes that criminalized Blackness. You could be arrested for talking too loud in the presence of a white man. You could be arrested for spitting. You could be arrested for not having a job. And police were used to conduct these sort of convict leasing era arrests. And then police were used in the lynching era to deliver Black bodies to white mobs. And police are being used today. Or even think about Birmingham, Alabama. Police were used to sick dogs on school children and to train high-power fire hoses on them. And today, police are being used to continue the terrorization of Black people. So that's why, and even when you look at the president of the city council in Minnesota, she said, we've tried all of the state-of-the-art reforms. We have tried body cams. We've tried diversity trainings. We've tried making sure that police live in the cities where they police. We've tried abolishing the chokehold. We've tried de-escalation trainings. We've tried all of the state-of-the-art trainings, but George Floyd was still killed. Black lives still don't matter. And that's why she concluded unanimously with the entire city council of Minneapolis that they would adopt the defund the police strategy. And the press was kind of shocked and said, well, what's that going to look like? She said, I don't know what it's going to look like, but the people of Minneapolis know what it's going to look like, and we're putting it to them. So, I think we are just being called to be innovative, to be creative, to think outside of the box about how we can ensure public safety in ways that do not continue to brutalize and terrorize Black people.
Thank you. We have one final question for tonight. I know that there are a lot of questions that we weren't able to get to, so I thank you so much for your time. Our last question is a kind of a tangible one. So what are your thoughts and suggestions for us here in Cincinnati, both as a community and as humans, for progress during this unique time?
Well, it seems like you're doing really amazing work. And so I say just, kudos and keep on doing that. And I'd repeat something that I already said actually tonight, and that is that these times require us to be both healers and warriors for justice. And I would say figure out, how can you up your game? How can you build your capacity to be a healer, whether in relationship to your family members, to your children, or in relationship to your community, your coworkers, in relationship to the earth. How do you develop your capacity to be present to others and to the earth in ways that bring about healing and wholeness, rather than in ways that bring about violence and discord and devastation? I think that is the question of our time. That's the question that history is posing today, because if we can't figure out how to transform the way that we are being present to the earth, from ways that bring discord and violence to ways that bring wholeness and healing, we may not have a future. So, restorative justice, transformative justice, healing, our healing arts, and can provide toolkits for us to become healers as well as warriors. Well, not to become, because you're to become better at healing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Davis. Thank you so much for your words, for your work. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight in Cincinnati. We genuinely appreciate it. Thank you to all of our award winners. Thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to all of you who are tuning in. It's been a pleasure to spend the evening with you. Now to announce our raffle winners, fingers crossed, and give some final words and reminders. IJPC Board Chair Shannon Hughes, the closer.
So many good nicknames coming tonight, but thank you, AFTAB, and thank you so much to everyone who was able to join us tonight. Each one of you continues to play an integral role in the work for peace and justice in Greater Cincinnati. And so we're asking for your continued support tonight. I am so proud of IJPC and inspired by the words we heard tonight. Dr. Davis started by saying that we are celebrating, though we cannot rest easy. And I think that feels like IJPC's work a lot of the time. We're doing this healing, and we're doing the fighting for justice. And I think that as we look at this work and are gathered here together, I'm just so proud of all that's happened, of the National Association of Social Workers who recognized IJPC as an agency of the year, but their commitment to continue to address systemic racism and white supremacy, and to advocate for the most vulnerable of our community, and to seek policies that uphold our values of justice cannot come to fruition without the support of people like you who believe in the mission of IJPC. You should look at the amazing stories that are on their 35 years project on the doors. You've seen them behind Allison, so many artifacts of the fights over the years, but it's really incredible to continue to be inspired by the stories of IJPC. So before you close out tonight, please consider making a generous gift to ensure that the next 35 years of IJPC are just as impactful. And thanks to each of you who have already given so generously. We also want to be sure to give a few thank yous before I announce those raffle winners. So thank you, Dr. Fania Davis. Thank you, AFTAB Pureval, and our award recipients, Sue Prieshoff and Reverend Nelson Pierce Jr., everyone who submitted nominations, our partner organizations from featured in some of the videos, the YWCA of Greater Cincinnati, End Slavery Cincinnati, Advocates for Basic Legal Equality, and Death Penalty Action. Tonight's sponsors, we're so grateful for you. The Peace Advocate sponsors, Sisters of the Precious Blood, the Peace Builders, Glen Mary Home Missioners and Sisters of Mercy. Our peace supporters, Anonymous, Paul and Barbara Bergman, Cincinnati AFL-CIO, Labor Council, the Dorothy Day Center for Faith and Justice at Xavier University, Fident Wealth Services, the Sisters of Charity of Cincinnati, and our peace promoters, Bellarmine Chapel, Christ Church Cathedral, Cincinnati Indivisible Rapid Response Team, McKinney and NAMI Co., the Ursulines of Cincinnati. To our peace seekers, the Brueggemann Center for Dialogue at Xavier University, Congregation of Divine Providence, Linda and Paul Davis, Franciscan Sisters of the Poor, Gerhardstein and Branch, Hyde Park Community United Methodist Church, Immaculate Heart of Mary Parish, the Sisters of St. Francis, Oldenburg, and Ursulines of Brown County. Our peace friends, Anawim Community, Equasion, and the Hillside Trust. Thank you so much for making tonight possible. Our annual gathering planning committee did incredible work as we imagined this event. Paul Bergman, Kay Brogel, Esther Claros Thurliot, Lucienne Driehaus, Roseanne Hassey, Haley Hughey, Allison Reynolds-Berry, Jan Seymour, and Cassidy Venema. Thank you for all you put into tonight. It was incredible to watch. Victoria Bauscher was our graphic designer for all of the program advertising, and Muse Cincinnati Women's Choir welcomed us this evening. The Cincinnati Festival of Faiths also lent their voices. IJPC board members and staff, thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, everyone who tuned in, thank you for being with us tonight. And now, finally, for the giveaway, we are excited to give away 2 signed copies of Dr. Davis's book, The Little Book of Race and Restorative Justice, Black Lives, Healing, and U.S. Social Transformation. Those winners are Janine Hing and Jane Van